Let's roll. So this is a user question. So this week, go to www.venturecapital.fm, send us questions, user question. This is from Shopsy. I'm sure I'm destroying the name, but we'll put it on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. But he says, hey, I have a question for the podcast. How important do you think it is for a VC firm to build a brand, online presence, social media, marketing, etc.? And I think they are with a VC fund right now, but they're with Lofty Inc. VC, whatever that is. But we're not here to promote Lofty. We're here to answer users' questions. So that's why I didn't go further.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you this question. How important do you think it is from like the founder perspective?
From the founder perspective, I think VCs that have podcasts, I tend to trust much more. And VCs that have podcasts are able to build trust at scale. But I think some VCs feel like they're no longer a VC and they're now
an influencer.
And there is critique like from Jason Calacanis. He did a podcast on this, that, you know, it's just as valuable to actually sit down and meet and help founders one-on-one than to be on podcast.
Which is a little ironic coming from him.
I think he feels like there's a trend. So maybe there's a lot of people like biting on his heels and becoming more popular. I'm not sure.
And he's like, you don't need to compete with me.
You know, one of the best, a
little self-serving.
Yeah, one of the best memes I ever saw was from the Harmon brothers.
Yeah,
they talked about, you know, they're an ad agency, and they said there's like two oxes that pull the cart, and you have to have both. You have really good content and you have distribution.
Yep.
And I think the same thing goes with VCs. You have to have a really good brand, but you need a way to amplify that brand. And so I would argue that depending on the fund, it could be very beneficial to have someone just be the face and be podcasting and building a brand and building a reputation, and then have a team support that, you know, it's just part of their marketing budget.
Yeah. I think the challenge is that entrepreneurs, well, they do pick firms. What they really pick is partners. And so I agree. I think my only pushback there is I think every partner within the fund needs to build their own profile, not the fund building a profile, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then the fund should create like the mechanisms to support each of those partners building out their own kind of personal brand, if that makes sense. And then have it all tie back, of course, to the fund. But yeah, I mean, look, the reality is that capital is becoming more and more fungible. Like, you know, it used to be that nobody would give money to startups because they're too risky, crazy ideas, whatever, right? That's no longer the case. Like, there are tens of billions of dollars raised, you know, all the time. Sometimes like a single fund will raise $10 billion plus to invest in startups. Like, there's plenty of money. And so now you need to figure out like new ways of differentiating yourself. Like, I would hate to be a venture fund that was like, you know, a handful of middle-aged white dudes, you know, in like some regional market, because I think it's so hard to differentiate if that's your MO, right? And I think more and more like venture funds have to figure out ways in which they can differentiate themselves, whether that's maybe through diversity or through investment sector or investment expertise. Maybe it's through thought leadership, whatever it might be. I think the stakes keep getting pushed harder and higher for differentiation of your capital and why an entrepreneur should take your money versus somebody else's. Because, you know, as Mark Andreessen has said, like, there's only a handful of deals that matter in every given year. And your job as a VC is to make sure you're in those deals. And so if that means that you need to build a really strong social media, you know, strategy and presence in order to get in front of those entrepreneurs, then so be it, right? But I don't think every venture fund has to do that, right? I think there are different ways in which you can build kind of differentiation. And to your point, like Jason Calacanis is saying, is like, hey, sometimes it's just as powerful or more powerful to take those one-on-one meetings and spend your time and energy helping entrepreneurs, because that's more authentic and they'll refer other entrepreneurs and so on and so forth, right? So, I think both can be valuable. Talking out of the other side of my mouth though is like we live in a global economy, right? And good ideas are kind of everywhere, and it's becoming easier and easier to build remote teams to execute on those ideas. And those networks are getting just bigger and bigger. And so it's harder to, stay relevant in front of so many entrepreneurs that are out there if you're just taking one-on-one meetings.
Okay. I think, so here's to maybe how I would answer this question. If I was like the principal at a fund or the CMO at a fund, I would, and if I was at a large fund, I would try to, I think I would create a podcast around each principal, assuming each principal has a certain focus. So maybe one principal is going after Web3 and another one's going after life sciences. And then I would get a team member who's running in the back to be setting up appointments with the top industries and thought leaders in that industry. And helping them create questions so they could easily just show up, do a quick, 30-minute hour, 1 hour podcast. And then it's a great networking opportunity. I think a lot of good deals could come from it. And then you're also setting your firm up as, hey, we're more than just money. And I think it goes both ways, both for raising capital for your next fund, extending the brand, and extending trust. Because I think if someone gave me the same terms and it was Jason Calcanis versus an unknown VC, I would take Jason's money hand over fist.
What if his terms were worse?
I might still take it.
But
he's got leverage too.
Right.
But I feel like I trust him. I think the best example of this is David Cancel. I don't know if you know him. So not a VC, although I'm sure he's done tons of angel investments. He recently, I think, just sold Drift. Because his podcast was so amazing, and it wasn't, hey, this is the Drift podcast I'm going to sell you. It was almost like, hey, here's my founder journey. That I developed such trust and respect that I bought his product, even though I didn't really need it. Just because I wanted to find a way to give back. And I think that's one of the really big values of a podcast. Who was the Snapchat guy who invested in Snapchat? Do you know who I'm thinking of? Is it Mark Suster? Mark Suster.
Did he invest in Snap?
I think so. Yeah, he's down in LA. He's at the LA VC. One of the things that he did is he was doing VC tips exclusively on Snapchat. And for me, that really kind of solidified him in my brain as someone who like really eats his dog food. He invested and then he chose to support that platform versus another platform. Because I don't think he has his own podcast, but he did that, I think.
He has his own blog.
His own blog?
Which was kind of one of the more popular VC blogs for a little while, but
So I would say I would have, that's how I think the answer is every principal decision maker, I would try to build an audience around them.
I think that makes sense.
But I would have it limited because it could easily take up 90% of their time.
Right.
And I would have a gatekeeper who would create rules. Oh, you're going to be, do no more than one podcast a week of your own. And be no more than a guest of another podcast one time a week.
So what did you think of that guy that claimed he was making $200K a year ghost tweeting for VCs?
I think, and again, this comes from Jason Calcanis, right? So maybe this shows the value of Jason's podcast is that, VCs who need the reach are willing to pay that much for it.
But does it like diminish? So you've talked a lot about trust, right? Like these podcasts, et cetera, like this content, like develops trust. It also creates like a little bit of an imbalance in relationship that makes you feel inclined to give back, and to re-equalize that relationship. But does it diminish it knowing that there's some likelihood that VC that you thought was like so insightful or really funny or like, really trustworthy didn't actually post that stuff? They paid somebody else like 10 grand to do it for them.
So the answer for me is no, because the VCs I trust are the ones that I hear firsthand on podcasts.
Okay.
So I would look at...
But you're not really on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not really on Twitter. But like at that point, if Jason Calcanis is a ghostwriter, at that point, I feel like it would just be an extension of him. The truth is most of these like Forbes contributors and whatnot don't write any of their own content. And they probably never even see their own posts. And so the further you get in the game, like I remember when I was in college, people talk about being a Forbes contributor. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And now I'm in the space. I'm like, I know these guys don't write any of their own content.
And even if they did, there's like a zillion of them.
Or like they sit down with someone that are like, hey, here's 2 or 3 thoughts and it's done.
Right.
It's not like, hey, here's high quality, amazing content. And so podcasts are unique because of the trust factor. But this Twitter thing, like, I don't know. I mean, if someone got you 10,000 followers a month for 10 grand,
yeah,
is it worth it? Is it worth it to UGF?
I don't know. I mean, for us, we're like a little bit different. And it would depend on the quality of those 10,000 followers, right? If it's like 10,000 followers from like China that will like are totally irrelevant to what we do, then no, right? Like, but if there are 10,000 like entrepreneurs founding businesses that we want to invest in and they're excited about our content, then yeah, like that probably is worth it,
like,
right?
Let's look at Austin Allred. Do you know him? His content I think is phenomenal, and it's allowed him to get Ashton Kutcher as an investor in his fund. It's allowed him to get the attention of Elon Musk. And I assume he writes his own stuff, but if it doesn't, in his case, there's a very strong ROI.
Yeah,
that supports it. I would like to think that a lot of these guys write their own stuff, but in truth is any really good founder has an amazing team part of them, whether it's public or not public.
Sure.
And I think that's partly why you're seeing more go to podcast or YouTube or whatnot, because you can actually then see the authenticity, not just like, a random tweet that comes out, once a week. Because I think your article talked about someone, getting 2 to 4 tweets a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's, it's like they talk in nature. It's, what do they call it? It's like an unfakeable tell, right? Where it's like, if you're doing the podcast, it's not getting ghostwrited, right?
Although some of the
like
AI,
it's really hard.
Have you seen some of the AI out there?
Yeah,
on video stuff?
Yeah.
I was in Lisbon the year before COVID, and they could take, who's it, that famous soccer player? They could show their like choose a language, and it was the same scene, but the lips just move slightly different.
Yeah.
And it's like, the soccer player knows Spanish, they know French, they know German.
Yeah, so maybe it's not going to be an unfakeable tell.
And have you seen the Tom Cruise deep fakes on TikTok?
Yeah.
Like they're getting pretty good.
Yeah, they are. It's only a matter of time before like nobody does anything. We just have AI do it all for us.
Give it 5 years. AI, Hollywood is nothing more than an AI engine, and who needs actors? They can create actors. Maybe. Probably not. I would disagree.
We're all just gonna like sit on our couch with an IV plugged in for nutrition and like drone out in front of AI created.
But at that point, you could have an infinite number of movies catered specifically for your interests.
I mean, isn't that kind of like what Netflix does today? You
Not
go on
to the same
Netflix,
scale.
but it's getting that way. You know what I mean? Like you go on Netflix and you're like, I want to watch action films, and all of a sudden, like you see like all these like no-name, super crappy action films, but they made them knowing that like they would appeal just to you.
Yep, but I don't watch that. I've got a rule. For the most part, unless it's a political movie, it's got to be like an 89 or higher,
Yeah.
or I skip it.
Yeah, but sometimes it'll be like 89 and it will be a Netflix produced film and you might actually even like it, but you're like, this like small subset of people that like it.
Maybe. I don't know. That's how I look at most films. Is it an amazing film?
But the 89%, that's a rating for you, right? It's not a rating like overall.
But I'm not logged in though. Are you logged in?
How are you like watching stuff if you're not logged in?
No. You're talking about the Netflix rating, right?
Oh, you're talking about like Rotten Tomatoes or something?
Anytime I go to watch something, open up a new tab,
Yeah.
Google Rotten Tomatoes.
You go to Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't trust the Netflix score.
Fair enough.
What I like is like Hulu's or these others who bring in the Rotten Tomato score.
Got it. Okay.
So that's my rule. So I hope we answered his question on what VC should.
The short answer is probably yes.
I would say probably, but it's easy for it to get out of hand.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like 100% crucial. Yeah.
But
you definitely have to have some angle.
What if you had a partner at your fund who only did podcasts? They did podcasting interviews 60% of their time.
I don't care. What I care about is like, are they driving really good deals back to the fund?
Do you think that would drive really good deals?
If they're able to demonstrate that it does, then sure.
What do you think? Why you guys, even Tom,
like if I had to choose, like would I invest in investing in a podcast, like my time, 60% of the time into doing a podcast?
You're investing your time, but what about investing and bringing other people in? Like what about hiring a third person at UGF
whose full job was like social?
50% of their time is to create brand awareness.
I mean, there are a lot of funds that have done that. A lot of funds.
Okay. So if UJF did it in this theoretical world, you think it would be positive ROI?
I think it could be if done right. I think it's a big if though.
Okay.
So
what's your personal thesis on podcasting? Because you've got this podcast, you've got your personal YouTube channel.
Look, I think podcasting is valuable. I think to your point, it provides kind of like an insight into how VCs think. Hopefully, like our listeners are getting some value out of like the stuff we talk about, and that it's helpful to them, and that they get to know us a little bit better, right? And feel more comfortable building relationships with us. I know like you've been reached out to from people that listen to our podcast. I have as well. It's fun hearing from them and, hearing the things that they appreciate, the feedback that they have for us. I think it's great. And then, a lot of them are seeking to create relationships and explore different opportunities together. So I think there's a lot of value. Sometimes I worry that there's a lot of podcasts out there and that you're effectively begging people for snippets of super valuable time to listen to those podcasts. But the flip side is like, look, there's 7 billion people, and each one of those individuals are going to have slightly different interests and preferences from others. And so what's really cool is that it used to be that distribution was super hard. And so everybody kind of got like spoon-fed the same stuff. Mm-hmm. And now with the internet, you really can like tap into these like really niche groups and give them like content that they're really excited about, that just simply wasn't possible even, 5-10 years ago.
Okay.
So, I don't know. It's interesting.
What's the chance that your next investment will come and listen to your prior 3 podcasts?
Probably pretty low,
Okay.
but potentially as we get bigger.
Okay. We'll have to watch what we say more.
You got to make me stop looking like such a bad VC, an evil VC.
No, I think I just want to get under the layers. So I'm not.
You
trying
just
to
want controversy. Stoke the controversy.
I think in our world, we're too concerned about being polished, and part of it is that myself, I don't feel like I've got a good filter.
Yeah.
When I was trying to raise my first time, every VC's like, you're just too honest.
Yeah.
And they're like, John, have you done this? Have you squished the x-axis? It would look better. And I'm like, why? I gave you perfect data, screenshot from Google Analytics. We doubled month over month for the last 3 or 4 months, but you want me to to change it. So it's all about being authentic,
but in a way that like gets people excited. I mean, you got to sell it.
But these are questions that, frankly, I want to know, and other people want to know.
Yeah, it's fair.
All right. Well, that's all for this podcast. Go to www.venturecapital.fm. And you can subscribe to all of our socials, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. All of the links are there. So we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.